welcome to this new series that I'm going to be making about free-to-play team compositions in Fate Grand Order. In this series I'm going to be going over a couple of teams that will use mostly low rarity servants with like one 4 or above star servant. The idea being you can sub in your own low rarity units and then pull the high rarity unit off of your support list potentially, and then have a pretty good functioning team to clear more difficult content than is available in part 1 or the early events, that kind of thing. That's not to say that these teams will be entirely replicable necessarily for all players, because I'm going to use my own craft essences, my own servants that will have skill levels that may be higher or lower than the ones that you have access to, this kind of thing. I'm also going to be using my own higher rarity servants rather than pulling them from the support list so that I can control all of that kind of thing. So it's not to say that these are going to be one-to-one transplantable into your own game. And in fact, that's not even the point. The point is just to show you me building a couple of teams so that you can see my thought process, how I played different servants off of each other, how I look for synergy and this kind of thing. It's going to be like the other team comp or team building video that I did. The only problem with that video is that I used a lot of high rarity stuff. I used, I think, Ozymandias and Merlin, and if you don't have one or the other, then you can't replicate that team at all. So this series is going to go over a couple of classes or a couple of teams based on classes. This one is obviously going to be a Saber team that I'm going to build and show you how I'm doing that and what I'm thinking about and how I'm approaching it, and then I'm going to go into the quest and actually show it in action so you can see how well it functions. And hopefully this just arms you with a little bit more knowledge of the kinds of things to look for when you're putting together your teams, as well as maybe, if you can replicate it, giving you a couple of really easy, cheap teams that you can build just with what you have and stuff that you can potentially pull off of your support list. So with all that said, let's get straight into it. As we can see, we're going to be fighting Lancers and Berserkers. Specifically, this is a repeatable free quest from the first Lost Belt, so the enemies are going to be fairly beefy, and we have to be a little bit careful about how we go into this, because the enemies, like I said, are going to be, I think this is like a level 72 or 74 quest, something like that. So the team that we're going to be building for this, just because it's one of the kinds of teams that I like to play, is going to be an art crit team. So let's go ahead and get started. True to my word, this is, like I said, going to mostly be low rarity units in our team, and specifically we're only going to look at the first 3 slots just for time purposes. If this was like a really hard quest that I was really worried about, then we could look at the filling in the backline as well. But for the purpose of this series, we're not going to be doing that. So the first servant that we're going to use is Hans Christian Andersen. He's a crit support, and he is arts-based, so he's going to help out the nature of our arts crit team. We can go into him, and we can see that he has skills that increase crit damage, a skill that will generate stars every turn, and then he can charge his own Noble Phantasm, because that also has good support capabilities, as you can see here. And if we look at his card deck, we can see he has lots of art cards, which we're going to need to form consistent arts chains to be looping or spamming Noble Phantasms as fast as we can. So Hans Christian Andersen is going to be the first servant that we'll pick for this team. That is a little bit backwards. I'm only doing it that way because I know how this team's going to end up. So we'll now do what I should have started doing, which is picking the base servant who the rest of the team is actually being built around. And as I said earlier, as you're now seeing, this isn't, again, intended to be one-to-one replicable in your own experience, because most of you probably don't have a level 90 Grailed NP5 10-10-10 Saber Lancelot. You could potentially find a Saber Lancelot in your support list, and this team would function similar, just with slightly lower numbers on Lancelot's damage. But functionally, it'll be very similar. Okay, so Lancelot is an arts crit servant. If we go into him, we can see once again he's got good crit star generation. He can gather those stars, and he can deal a lot of damage with them. His Noble Phantasm is very straightforward. It just deals damage. Between his Noble Phantasm and his deck, he's got lots of arts cards. So he's going to, again, help out with getting a lot of arts chains, consistently charging up Noble Phantasm gauge. Now, the big issue with these two servants that we need to address with our third slot is going to be the fundamental weakness of this team, which is its durability. Okay, it is generally better to emphasize or highlight a servant's strengths with their support units rather than to cover for a weakness. In this case, though, we are pretty worried about the fact that Lancelot has 0 evade, defense buff, heal, invincibility, guts. He has nothing to protect himself. Hans has a little bit of defensive utility. In his Noble Phantasm, it'll give a little bit of a heal and a little bit of a defense buff, but that's only when he can activate his Noble Phantasm, which isn't necessarily whenever we need it. His first skill goes some of the way towards getting us there, but that first skill has a very long cooldown after it's used, so we're kind of worried that this team is going to be made of paper just a little bit. So for our third team slot, we're going to pick somebody who is really high in defensive utility and can help balance out the highly offensive nature of this team by keeping them alive long enough to make sure that they actually finish the quest. And of course, the best option for that is going to be your Kohai Mash. Mash has excellent defensive skills. Let me make sure that I have the right ones equipped. Yes, I do. So you can see that this is for 3 out of every 5 turns. This targets one ally and makes them invincible for 1 turn, and she can draw all fire to herself to really keep everybody protected in the event of an emergency. Also, her Noble Phantasm, whenever she can get it, further provides defense and damage cut. So now that we've got Mash around to keep everybody alive, Hans there to increase damage mostly and generate crit stars, and then Lancelot to use those crit stars and the buffs provided by the other two to deal all the damage for our team, we've got our team pretty much set up. The last thing to look at is going to be craft essences. Naturally enough, we're going to use 2030 on Hans Christian Andersen because it passively generates crit stars. So you take that in addition to his skill being active, which generates a handful every turn already, and you're going to have quite a few coming in before we even use any quick cards, which matters because this team has a combined total of 3 quick cards. So we're not going to be generating a lot of stars. With our quick cards, we need to look to other sources to do that. Just to make sure that we're really good, we're going to double up and use another 2030 on Mash. If you don't have 2030, especially not 2 max limit broken 2030s, I totally get it. But you might have something that can kind of do a similar job. So if we come here to the filter and we scroll all the way down to the damage category, you can see that there's this box that we can check that says crit star gain each turn. And then this will show you all the craft essences that you have that can do what 2030 does, which is just generate stars each turn. If it's not 2030, it usually is more like 4 stars rather than 8 or 10. But hey, it's stars per turn, and that's what we're going for. If you can, if you don't have 2030, it might be best to look for like stars per turn and buffed star generation. Like this. Increase crit star drop rate and stars per turn. Again, on a arts servant, the buffed star drop rate isn't going to massively impact them, but it does give you something. It does give you something in the way of more crit stars compared to if you didn't have that effect active. It only translates to a couple over the course of the battle, but a couple's a couple. For Lancelot, we're going to use a craft essence that will allow him to better take advantage of his role as the damage dealer of the team. So we're going to use this craft essence called Conversation on the Hot Sands. This is going to increase his crit star gather rate, meaning his cards will get more of those crit stars, and it buffs his critical damage. So all in all, we've got our 3 units. They've got their craft essences, so the only thing left to do is to run the quest, because we're all set now. So now that we're here in the battle, we're going to start off by activating some skills. Not an awesome first set of cards, but that's okay. And you can see that once Lancelot gets critting, he's just going to absolutely shred everything that he hits. We should probably focus down the Berserker, since it can deal a lot of damage. That was lucky. And now we've got our first NP ready to go, so we'll use Anderson. And we'll hold on to Lancelot's NP just because we don't need it to kill this 15k HP mob. So we'll just have him use a quick card to generate some extra crit stars for the next turn. Here we might as well, though. So you can see how this is going. It's going quite well. The enemies are not able to significantly damage us. We're getting pretty regular NPs. That one's not as good. We will take advantage of that thusly. When Mash has that skill active, she gets a massive boost to her NP game, so watch. There you go. So the enemies are having a hard time hurting us because we are on class advantage with Lancelot, as well as Mash's defensive buffs are helping everybody out quite a bit. We'll go ahead and pop all of Lancelot's skills. Hold on to our Mystic Code for just a moment, though. We'll go like this. Just because we're not. Nice. Okay, and then we will go like that, and hope that the attack buff procs. Okay, so we should be okay here. Yeah, right on. So just like that, pretty easy. So you can see that a team like this, when it's built well, it's pretty effective. The enemies just didn't really have anything for me, and I was able to pretty much tear through them very quickly, very effectively. So when you really consider all the different aspects of team building, and you put together something that works really well, you can clear even fairly difficult content quite effectively using mostly just 2 and 3 star kind of stuff. Everybody has Mash, everybody has Hans, their skills are easy to level. I used Lancelot, but you could use any, like Art's Saber, who has a skill relating to crit damage to do much of the same thing. So if you can find like a Yagyu in your support list, or Hokusai Saber, who was just a free servant given out for one of the recent events, so if you have her, you could use her in exactly the same way. So there's any number of ways that you could build a team just like this that could clear a lot of content for you, assuming you don't have to fight like archers, because they would tear your saber up real fast, especially a fragile one like Lancelot. But the point is, when you consider all the aspects of team building and you build a team that just meshes really well with each other, they can highlight each other's strengths, cover for the weaknesses a little bit. You can build a team that just crushes content, and you can do it with stuff that you already have, most likely, or can easily borrow from your most average support lists. Now, if you're just starting and you maybe don't have the most extensive support list, you can check the description down below for my follow code. You can type that in and give me a follow, which will let you use my support list during Part 1 story quests. My support list currently looks like this, so if this looks like it would be fun to play around with some of these servants, give me a follow, and you can, like I said, use me up till the end of Part 1 for all story quest content. Also in the description is going to be my Discord username. You can send me a message if you have any questions about this or any other FGO related topic. I'm always happy to discuss those things with people. Or you can leave your questions in the comment section. I am pretty good about getting back to people pretty quickly, so yeah, if you need any help, you can ask me there as well. Thank you for watching. Episode 2 should be coming pretty soon. See you next time.